Just 1 second. I just gotta get the right page of my Makamas open. My computer did something weird here. Stop that. Okay, sorry, hold on 1 second. Yeah, okay. So let's get rolling, and let me try to align my screen up properly. Sorry. I'm wondering if you don't mind terribly to try with your videos on, that would be okay. So let's roll. Who am I muting? I'm muting Jakey. Okay, so let's begin. We're going to try to do like a short, in and out over here today, and get hopefully a nice, mahalach in the and the machlokas between the two tosis in that we began with, and they'll really start us off with a great understanding of our sugya. Let's remember that just a couple of very quick, small chazar points. That the Tosis by us in Kesuvos, right? We understand that the line Ger Katan at Bilanos al das bezdin, which the Gemara says means zachin adam shelo b'fanav. Tosis understands in Kesuvos that zachin is the classic concept of zechia that exists in Kol Torah Kula. So when you're learning the sugis above Mitzvah about the idea that I can be zoche in something on your behalf, Tosis understands that that's what we're speaking about in this Gemara. That's what leads Tosis to tell us that since the Katan on a Daraisa level doesn't have the ability to have that concept of Zach and Adam Shalom, but it has to be that the entire Gerus that's being spoken about here is only a Gerus midrabana. Okay, and that leads us to a second chiddush, that the entire Gerus is predicated on the idea of that the Chazal have the ability to be Oker Davar min Torah, Bekum ve'aseh. Okay, they're telling you he's a Jew, the Chol Davar. Totally Jewish across the board, despite the fact that the Aldas Bezin is not, the Zechiyah doesn't really work, but we're okay Davar min Torah. Okay. On the other hand, the Tosis and Sanhedrin totally disagreed with that, and Tosis is very, very clear in Sanhedrin Ayin Ches that Tosis understands that this is not the concept of Zechiyah. I just want to read the line in Tosis again. V'nira the Zechiyah the Gerus lo dami the Shar Zechiyos. This is not the same thing as all the times that the Gemara uses that term of Zachin Adam Shalom B'fanav. Mashet Bezin Matbilan also Einam Zochin Ba'avuro. The fact that Bezin is a matbil, they take the kid and put him in the water. They're not being zoche in anything on his behalf. They're not acquiring anything for him. They're not providing him with anything. Elohu zoche ba'atzmo b'gufo shenase ger b'nichnas tachas kan fiyashchina. He's been doing everything himself. He's the one who, as he says, with his ba'atzmo b'gufo, he's doing the milah, he's doing the tefillah. And the whole idea that the Gemara says of Zachan Adam Shalom B'fanav, Tosis points out later, just means to come and tell us that since it's a good thing to be Megayer, the Bezdin will get involved. They'll be misamates, they'll invest the time and energy to perform the Gerus. They will be involved in this, but if it wasn't a good thing to do, if it wasn't a quote-unquote zchus, but again, it's a borrowed term, if it wasn't a zchus, then we would just let the kid, whatever it is, move on in life by himself. Because it's a good thing, we'll do the Gerus. But who's being Megayer? The kid himself. We're doing nothing really on his actual behalf. We're not providing any official ritual purpose by being matbil the kid. This is not the regular concept of zachin. So that's a clear machlokes there between the two lines in our Tosis, and we're going to analyze that over the course of today. At the same time, we also pointed out though that there is a twist that Tosis and Sanhedrin has, right? That our Tosis Davka doesn't have about Geros, and which was that the Tosis by us was only bothered ever about how do we have a Ger Katan be Megayer, where we need the Das Bezdin. That Ger who's a Gadol be Megayer on himself, we'll call the normal process of Geros. that of course, okay, the guy's Megayer and that's it. And the Bezdin's not, certainly not doing anything in the slightest bit. And that doesn't, bother me. It says, okay, of the line, Gita V'yada Ban Ke'echa, that the, what do you call it, that we, whatever Zechia is there, is not really problematic, for us. And but there's no real din of Zachin by a ger who's a gadol. On the other hand, Tosas and Sanhedrin, Davka made a point when he was discussing how does the ger Katan be Megayer. He says, really, in theory, I have a problem. How could ever a ger gadol be Megayer? And Tosas says the only way that really works is that the Bezdin over there and Achanami is being Megayer him. But again, the idea was that the Ba'in Ke'echad, because the Gerus is the thing that allows him to be Jewish, so then we already treat him with the Jewish halachos, so to speak, already at that staging. And we're going to come back to the line in Tosas a little bit later on, what the significance exactly of that is. Okay, first let's take a look though, a little bit better at our Tosas. We're going to try to run through a couple of very important points. Over here, there's going to be a number of basic questions. We're going to now look only at our Tosas, unless otherwise noted. I'll tell you when we're referring back to the Tosas in Sanhedrin. When we speak about our Tosas, let's get to the key points over here. Tosas is telling us that the phrase Adas Bezdin means that the Bezdin is actually serving in a real capacity over here. They're being zoche on behalf of the, they're being zoche on behalf of the child. And since the kid has no din of zechia, no one's allowed to act as a shliach. Remember, Tosas is Shitas that zechia is mitam shlichos. You can't act as a shliach on behalf of the katan, so that the whole gerus can't really work. It's only midrabana. Okay? Now, the basic question that we have on Tosas, which is a very, very basic question, and I'm sure this has been bothering all of us, if someone taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, guy, what is the Bezdin actually doing over here on behalf of the katan? What zechia? What are they acquiring on behalf of the katan? What are they giving him? What are they granting him? Like Tosas and Sanhedrin points out, the katan is going through the motions. Okay, he's going to the mikvah. He's having a bris milah. All the acts of gerus are being done. What is the Bezdin providing him that he's not doing by himself? So I understand, fine, the katan can't have shlichus, but what are they a shliach for? Do you follow that question? Which way? Yes, we follow the question. In other words, don't do that. Listen again. Is the Bezdin the one that's actually getting undressed and being tovel in the mikveh? No. So they're not his shluchim to go to the mikveh. Are the Bezdin people giving themselves another bris milah? No, right? So then that is shliach to do the bris milah. Yeah. So what exactly are they functioning? What was that?
They're giving him das. They're shliach and das.
So you basically got a shliach for they're providing the das over here. But that's what he's doing all of the things that are necessary. Again, let me make it clear. We didn't discuss yet the concept of Kabbalah's all mitzvahs, right? That's going to be an upcoming sugya we're going to do. That's discussed by the Rishon. The ger has to say, I want to be Jewish. Okay, but the Bezdin is not doing that for him. The Bezdin aren't being makabil all mitzvahs. They're being zoche in something for him.
They're giving him. You can't just do this. Yeah, they're not going into mikvah for him, but you can't just do something without das. In order to actually accomplish something, you need kavanah. You need das. So you need someone to give that for you. Yes, he's doing the actions. But as a kid, he can do the actions, but it means nothing. They're giving him the tziyah, they're giving purpose to what he's doing.
So again, let's just try to make it clear. The phrase that Tosas is bothered by of zachin l'adon shelo b'fanav means that I have an ability to acquire something on somebody's behalf. right? I can do something for you. So what are they doing that he can't do himself?
Thinking.
Did he
Going
go
through them.
to the mikveh? Did he have a milah? He went through the process of geros. Now you're making an assumption, right? Which maybe is true, maybe is not true, which is the process, right, is something that requires a certain degree of das. Okay, let's make an example. If I wanna be yotzei the mitzvah of lulav and esrog on know anything about, but can I be mekayim mitzvah again? Huh? Because I did the basic Maisa mitzvah was done. I did what I had to do. Yeah? So if the process of Geros requires a Mila, Tefillah, and a Kabbalah's own mitzvahs, and he's able to do all those things, so it's over. So let's take a little look over here. There's a very, very important machlokes amongst the Achronim, but we'll see how much it fits into Rishonim also. We'll spend a couple of minutes, doing, over here. So let's start with this Rabbi Chanan in the Kovei Shiurim. Skip over for right now. Rabbi Chanan says over here like this. We're starting from the beginning of the beginning of the piece. Bahadager Katan abilan also mitam zechia. Ikshuvtos is the ein zachin la'akum. Reish Perak ben Saromara Kasvu Halav Kushya. They are in Senate says the ein zechia la'akum is not such a problem. The imkain tikshi kola gerim eichmat bilan osam. The kevin the zechia subiyad bon keechad shani. So Tosa says that doesn't really matter. It's all bon keechad. We're zocheh for the goy. Now, Rabbi Chanan now says as follows. My zechiyat tzarech b'chol ger shehu ben das umizgayer midas atzma adol being megayer. What zechiyah? What is Bezin acquiring or doing on his behalf? The ger is being megayer. What does the Bezin have to do? Like, what was Tosus bothered by in Sanhedrin? Now listen to Rabbi Chanan now explains our Gemara. V'had din zechiyah b'Katan, humishum degeros tzricha das. So Rabbi Chanan takes the approach that Aaron was saying a minute ago, which we're going to see now is not so simple at all. Right? But a geros requires a degree of das. You have to be interested in the geros. Katan lav bardeya. And a katan, of course, who's not in halacha a bar das. So we say, well, you can't have the proper understanding of what it means to be able to go through the process or to affect what we call the chalos, to affect the effect of what a geros is meant to be. So the Bezdin is able to provide, right, what we're going to call right now the interest in the geros. The idea that the guy wants to be able to be Megayer, so that's already enough to be able to make a geros on his behalf, according to the way our Tosis is explaining. Let's say, for example, a person wants to make a kinyan, right? I want something to become mine, right? I make the chalipin, I take the money, I do a meshicha, right? I go through the actions. But if the das is not there, right? If the interest in making the chalos and making the effect or changing the status of ownership of a certain something isn't present, so the kinyan can't possibly get off the ground. If I give a girl a ring, right, and I have no das to be makadisher, so the mere fact that I give her a ring, Rabbi Chanan says, obviously that doesn't make a marriage. If you want to create a chalos, if you want to create or affect a status change, so that does require some degree of das. A katan doesn't have any das. The Bezdin is the one who's going to. The Bezdin is going to be going to provide that das in order to allow the geros to be able to take effect. That's the way Rabbi Chanan starts off explaining. I'm going to read a little bit more.
Are there any other scenarios where? Are there any other scenarios where Bezdin asks as a shliach for das of somebody besides this case? Like, are there any other precedents?
Hold off. It's a very good question, Jakey. Hold off on that for a minute. Okay, it's a very, 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 very important question. So Rabbi Chana continues, "V'nira that das HaTos is the hadagera tzricha Bezdin en perusha the tzarach re'iyah greda mi Bezdin kamo be'eda kiddushin el Bezdin osim es chalos hageros." Listen carefully now to what Rabbi Chanan just said. He's explaining the Tosas in Sanhedrin. Tosas in Sanhedrin applied the concept of the Zechiyah of the Bezdin even to a ger who was a gadol. Okay, so Rabbi Chanan says, you know what I see from there? That it's a very interesting chiddush now that Tosas seems to hold, and that is that the Bezdin who's sitting there and watching the geros, their job is not just to watch, and their job is not just to, I'm going to use the word authorize, right, or authenticate the geros and say, oh, we are the witnesses, you did it in the presence of the court, watched something. They're not just there to provide like authority and officialness to the geros. Says Rabbi Chana, no, you see the Tosas seems to see that Bezdin, according to his words, they're osim es chalos geros. The geros is actually not done by the misgayer, by the guy who's being megayer. The geros is actually done. What makes the person Jewish is that the Bezdin, I'm going to use the expression right now, they're the ones that process him, right? It's not just that it's done in front of them, but they're processing the misgayer, the person who wants to be megayer. Vilachain, Tosas there in Sanhedrin says that we require a concept of zechiyah even by a ger who's a gadol, because that gadol, right, doesn't have the ability to be megayer. It has to be that we, the court, we the Bezdin, have to be able to process you, and ein zechiyah on behalf of an akum, so we can't do anything for him. Says Tosas, no, bon ke'echad, it's all coming at the same time. That's not such a problem. And what Rabbi Chanan was just medayek over here was that our Tosas and Kesuvos doesn't agree with that. Our Tosas and Kesuvos, who is never bothered by how is a ger gadol who's an akum, and how can we ever have zechiyah for the akum? So our Tosas doesn't believe in that. Our Tosas adarabba. Our Tosas thinks, this is the way Rabbi Chanan just set things up, that the geros is actually done solely by the misgayer himself. He's the one who affects the chalos of the geros. He's the one who processes himself. The Bezdin only serves the role of exactly what we said before, of witnessing. It's done in front of them. They have to authorize and they have to say, oh, we saw that this took place. But the Bezdin is not the ones that are actually megayer. They don't create the geros for the person. They're not zapping a geros onto the guy. They're not making him Jewish. He's making himself Jewish. It just, in order to be megayer, it has to be done in the presence of a Bezdin, because they're the official representative, so to speak, of Klal Yisrael. Excuse the expression, a little tongue-in-cheek, but they're the welcoming committee that's here. You can't become Jewish, you can't join the club without having people clap for you and say, hey, great, nice to meet you. And that's the role of the Bezdin, according to the Tosas by us in Kesuvos. That's why, one more time, a ger who's a gadol, there's no need for zechiyah at all, because he's doing everything himself. He decides to be megayer. The process is being done by him. Tosas in Sanhedrin, on the other hand, who asks about a ger gadol, right? And you can't be zoche on behalf of a goy. That's because Tosas thinks that geros is a totally different thing in that Tosas. The geros is not done by the ger himself. He is not making himself a ger. What makes him a ger, what actually creates the chalos of the geros, is the fact that yes, Bezdin are actually the one that grant him the geros, that exists. Again, I don't think you can totally make this exact chakira when it comes to like secular things. I remember I had a friend once in Kollel who was an immigrant from Hungary. I remember when he first moved to America, and he was learning by us by Rav Feivel. He only spoke Hungarian and Yiddish. His English is horrible. So it took a little while. Like, we helped him, and he actually eventually became a citizen. I mean, we practice like the whole Pledge of Allegiance. This is Pledge of Allegiance. Which one's? What do you do this? This, whatever it is. The Pledge of Allegiance, the Star Spangled Banner. He knew like all the stuff, and he became an American citizen. Okay. Now I think it's probably true if you read the documents that when you become an American citizen, the court is the one that the people that you. It's not really converting, but when you get your citizenship, like the United States of America allows you to become an American citizen. Right? Merely putting your hand in your heart and saying, I pledge allegiance to the flag and whatever, that doesn't make you an American citizen. The government has to grant you the citizenship. Tosas in Sanhedrin is telling us that every gerus is exactly like that. The Bezdin, as representatives of we the people of Klal Yisrael, we are granting you your Yiddishkeit, right? But says so, but that's a form of Zechia. So how do we do that on behalf of the ger? So that's not a problem. We got that part of the Kovei Shurim here? Okay. Hopefully nice and easy. Now, but what we really want to focus on is on the first part of the Kovei Shurim. Because the first part of the Kovei Shurim, when he spoke about the Ger Katan, okay, in our Tosfos, where Tosfos is telling us that we need a Zechia on his behalf. Now let's put the pieces together. According to our Tosfos in Kesuvos, this is now a participation moment, so like unmute yourself. What's the role of the Bezdin in the Gerus according to Tosfos and Kesuvos? Are they the ones that grant the Judaism, or are they just the people that like authorize and witness that it took place in front of them?
Authorize and witness.
One more time, Eli, I missed you.
Authorize and witness. They're not the welcoming committee.
Well, authorize and witness. That's all they're doing. Okay, they're not just, so who's making the ger Jewish according to our Tosfos?
The ger.
The ger.
The ger himself. Right? This is all him. So now we have the problem that Rabbi Chana was addressing, which was okay. So hot nicha by a ger who's a gadol. He does it himself, right? And we clap our hands, we watch, no problem. The ger who's a katan, though, on the other hand, right? That's where our Tosfos is struggling to figure out. But how does it work? There's no zechia. Zechia mitam shlichus. A katan doesn't have shlichus. How can we ever be zoche for him? So then we're left with that theoretical question. But what are they being zoche in at all? They're not making him Jewish. So what are they giving him that he can't do? So Tosfos has a chiddush, and that chiddush that Tosfos says is that the das that's necessary, what we're going to call the interest in becoming Jewish, right? The interest in creating that chalos of a gerus, that this person is missing because he's a katan, and katan is not a bardeya. Says Tosfos chiddush, the Bezdin is providing that das. Now, JK asked a good question before, which we'll come back to a little bit later. Hey, wait a second. That sounds like a very, very strange, kind of a thing. Do we ever find an example of somebody being zoche in das on behalf of somebody else? Do we ever find an example where I for sure examples where I'm picking up an item. I find this thing in the street and I say, oh, now this is going to belong to Chaim Friedman. Fine, I'm zoche in the item for you. Yeah? The Bezdin will even understand the idea maybe that they can create a chalos of something. Okay, we could hear that the Bezdin are the one that that makes the guy Jewish. The idea that the Bezdin gives somebody das that they don't have on their own, so that already is something that the emes is like a little bit of a unique thing that we don't necessarily find in other places. That's a question that there's in Sfarim. There's one of the great gedolim of Europe called the Meishiser Ilui, who asked that kasha on our Baruch really. He says it's a little bit hard to understand that part. It might make a lot more sense to us to say that the Bezdin that will like one of two things. Again, that the Bezdin is making the gerus. Okay, that I can totally hear. They're the ones that totally give him the chalos. That we're fine with. Remember Tosfos and Sanhedrin, right? The ger who's a katan, right, is going through the motions himself, right? But who creates the chalos for the gerus? The actual gerus that's being done by Bezdin, both by a ger who's a katan and by a ger who's a gadol. But that's not a function of the classic kind of zechia. We're not possessing anything. We're not doing anything on his behalf. The role of the Bezdin is even greater than that. We're the ones who are actually Megayer. We're the ones who are creating the close of the Geras for him. By the way, let's just take a look in Rashi over here. One of the Rashis that you had done. Take a look in the Rashi Dibur Mascha al Das Bezdin. Okay? So Rashi writes over like this: Matbios al Das Bezdin shlosha yil betvilaso kedin kol tvilas ger shetzrichim gimel. You have to have 3 people at the geras, just like any tvila requires 3 people to be there, etc. I'm going to leave out the next phrase for a minute. Now, we could be medayik in that part of Rashi, for right now. I'm a little bit of a diuk. Is there any real reason, random halacha in Hilchos Geras, that kol tevilas ger needs 3 people? Okay, that's a din. It's a gemara like that. It's paskin the shulchan. You have to be megayah in front of 3 people. Why is that relevant to the sugya of the ger katan? And if you look right carefully, what Rashi says is the bezdin are doing the same thing, right, that you do by any geras. Shlosha yubit tvila, so kedin kol tevilas ger shetzrichim gimel. Just like any geras requires 3 people. Yeah. So if you're listening carefully to the way we're learning our Tosfos, you're going to notice that Rashi seems over here, but Pashas, to be arguing on our Tosfos. A big important machlokas Rashi and Tosfos. Why? Because what Rashi seems to be saying when he says this is the regular role of the Bezdin, right? Just like Kol Tevilas Ger is Richim Gimel, right? The reason why Rashi sticks that in over here is because he's coming along to tell us, you know what's happening over here? This is exactly what goes on by every single Tevila. It's not that the Bezdin is doing something strange or different on behalf of the Ger Katan. The Bezdin always provides the role of being the Gayer, a person, of actually creating, and that's also true by a ger who's a katan, and that's the key, excuse me, to what's taking place over here. Every single ger is be'etzem, a geras that's done al das the bezdin, and the chiddush, of course, over here is that the bezdin does it on his behalf, even though we didn't ask him, which, as we saw in the Tosfos and Sanhedrin, is because if it is a good thing for him, so then we'll get involved and we'll be megayer him. But the point is that this gerus, what Rashi is trying to explain to us, is that the function of the bezdin is actually the classic function. According to Tosfos, the bezdin in our Gemara, ger katam at bilan oso al das bezdin, the bezdin is doing something totally different than they would do by a normal gerus, right? And again, according to our Tosfos, what's the bezdin doing that doesn't take place by a regular gerus? Please all shout out at once. Okay, I'm going to say correct to all those who are thinking the right answer. It's a little bit hard to do this on Zoom, but I'm going to go with the flow over here. According to our Tosfos, the bezdin is not doing the same thing here that they do normally. Here, the bezdin is actually giving das to the katan, providing a das that they don't do by any normal gerus. A regular gerus to the ger, what do they call it? The ger is megayer himself. He has his own das, and it has to be in the presence of bezdin. But like we said before, that's a regular random hilchos gerus halacha that has no relevance here. The chiddush here is that by a katan, we need a bezdin to grant him the das, but he's not able to have on his own. And that's why Jakey was asking before, hey, wait a second, is there such a precedent for that? That's like a very interesting application of the concept of Zachin Adam, of Zachin Adam Shelo B'fana. Where do I find such a thing that I can be Zachin things on your behalf, but who says that I can be Zachin in a like an abstract, and that's not regular Zechia. Where type do I find that? Well, if you take a look in I'm just trying to find my Birka Shmuel. Just give me 1 second. Sorry, I just left it over there. Hold on, I'm disinterfering. Wait 1 second. that guy in. Okay, so if you take a look in the Birkat Shmuel, Rabbi Baruch Ber has two very, very interesting mahalchim over here that once again are very, very different than what Rabbi Chanan had explained. I'm going to read a little bit, inside with you, and again, they're neither are the most simple pshatim ayah, but it's clear that HaTos is saying something along these lines. So Baruch Ber explains as follows. Again, I'm going to read some of the things. I hope you have it sort of in front of you. He says there's two ideas here that are taking place. Number one, Rabbi Baruch Ber has a very interesting line where he says that Zechiyah's Geros have be Zechiyah Kamo Kol Zechiyah's Mama. When the Bezdin is being Zoche in the Geros, Rabbi Baruch Ber explains what's really happening is, as intriguing as it sounds, is that the Bezdin actually is acquiring something on behalf of the Ger, just like any other time that I acquire something, a physical thing, on behalf of somebody else. He says as follows: Geros is an Indian Zechiyah, shezoche behageros ubekedushas Yisrael. Again, I'm just highlighting some of the key lines from the Baruch Ber. He says, Rabbi Baruch Ber, that HaTos here is an interesting idea. That there's a thing called, these actually are like documented real terms, Kedushas Yisrael, Judaism, right? He has the Kedusha of a Yid. Says Tosfos, that Kedusha is something that's a little bit empirical, and that's something that's out there in the, we're going to call it right now, the spiritual realm, and the Bezdin is grabbing onto that Kedushas Yisrael and giving it, providing that for the Ger. So our HaTos of Baruch Ber explains over here, again, this is not like what we were just describing before, that when you're dealing with a Ger, the Ger actually requires someone to, like we said before, to grant him, right, that Yiddishkeit, to grant him his ability to be Jewish. So I'm being zoche in a certain status or a kedusha that he doesn't have right now, that I'm providing for him. Some of the later Achronim, because again, Baruch Ber was like a short time ago, but we could sit and we're not going to do right now in the course of like the next 5 minutes, but just to leave for food for thought, people discuss as Baruch Ber and Rabbi Chanan both saying the same kind of a thing. When we spoke about before that the Bezdin is what's Megayer, which is what Rabbi Chanan explained, HaTos in Sanhedrin was holding. Some think that that's what Baruch Ber is explaining, that our HaTos holds over here also. When Baruch Ber says that they're being zoche in the Kedushas Yisrael on his behalf, what they're really saying is that HaTos that the Bezdin is making him Jewish. Right? The Bezdin is the one that creates the chalos of the Geros. It's not so clear 100%, but that's what do you call that? That's what the Birkat Shmuel means to say. He certainly doesn't use the same terminology that Rabbi Chanan does, but he describes this as a zechiyah in what he calls a zechus mamon. The same way I can be zoch in a mamon for you, I can be zoch in the kedushas Yisrael and give that over to you. Now, since a Katan, you can't be zoch on his behalf, so we can't give you that Kedushas Yisrael either. In other words, the Pasha reading of Baruch Ber is that the Geros process is in fact being done by the Misgayer himself, not by the Bezdin, because the Bezdin is giving him a key that he's not able to access on his own. So the process is done by the Ger, but just that one last key to open up the last door, that's being granted to him by the Bezdin, as opposed to Rabbi Chanan says, which was that the actual Geros itself is only being done by the Bezdin, and the Maase Geros are what's being done by the Mizgayer. Then Rabbi Chanan goes on, again, I just want to try to shtup a lot into the last moment over here. Then Rabbi Chanan goes on and says a second pshat that he said he heard from the Brisker Rav. He said, Shamati mikvar piagona amiti Bezdin, the brisk shlita. I heard from the Brisker Rav. By now, he's obviously a Zecher Tzadik B'Bracha, not a Shlita. And here Rabbi Baruch Ber says something that's also very, very interesting. I'll read the words, and this is actually a little bit more complicated. Ma'aseh hamila u'tfila tzrichim she'iyu midas habayla. The act of Geros, the Maisa of the Mila and the Maisa of the Tevila have to be done al das, or with the das rather, with the consent of, and with the interest of the person who's doing them. He gives an interesting example. There's a Gemara Yavamas Daf Memhei that darshans from a pasuk, the ben ish iyatamol bal karcho, that you can't give a mila for geros bal karcho of the megayer. And if I was to give him a mila bal karcho, the mila would not count for the geros at all, and it would have to be done over again. Said the Brisker Rav, okay, what do I see from that Gemara? Brisker Rav says, I see from there that a Maisa of Mila, the fact that you had the Mila, that's not really enough to affect the Gerus, but it has to be done with the das of the person who's having the Mila. I have to consent. I have to want that in order for that Maisa Mila to be a meaningful Maisa Mila. Since the acts of Gerus have to be done with the consent and knowledge of the person doing them, so the Katan definitionally, now categorically, can't possibly have the Mila and the Tvila themselves. Let's explain in other words what we just said over here in the name of the Baruch Bear. Again, please, chime in if there are things that are not clear, because there actually are, going to be some complicated, at least I think, because I'm not as smart as you guys are, but some complicated, things that Baruch Bear is about to say. And that's as follows. Again, I want to put this in context of the way we presented the ideas. Baruch Bear tells us as follows. The actual chalos hageros, okay, is not done by the Bezdin. Okay? They're not the ones that are affecting the geros in the slightest, but it's all done by the ger, and the Bezdin only serves the role of the, like I said before, the welcoming committee. They're just going to clap their hands and say, oh, we see, it was done in front of us, we can authorize that there was a geros done. The process of geros, on the other hand, requires a mila and a tvila. Okay? And here the Brisker Rav has a very interesting chiddush, which is that the mila and the tvila, even though the actions were done, hey, that looks like a mila. You just sliced off a very significant part of his body. That looks like a tefillah. He just got really wet and was dunked under the water over there. Hey, that looks like, and he's even called it, he paid the $5, 5 shekel for the mikveh fee. That looks like a mikveh. You just made a tefillah. Says the Brisker Rav, nope, that's not true in the slightest bit. A mila for geros is only a maisa of mila if it was done with the das of the misgayer. Says the Brisker Rav, after all, there's a gzeras hakasa. We learn out that even on a ger who's a gadol, if you give the mila against his will, he would have to do it again. It doesn't count as a mila. Yeah? Now let's just make sure we're illustrating the point over here. Okay? You go over to I'll tell you Ma'aseh Shahaya. When I used to run a school years ago, I ran a school. At a certain time, we realized that the kids in the 8th grade class and they were all bar mitzvah age. None of them ever had a bris milah. Okay, so we started to talk to them. Bris milah, it's an important thing, and no one was really so interested. What I heard, not understandable reasons, they weren't so excited about going and getting a milah. Okay, so we made them a little bet. And we made a bet. We're going to play a game of American. It was me and there was one other person today. He's one of the principals of SAR in Riverdale. Benny Kress is his name. We made a bet with the class that we're going to play a game of American tackle football. Us two against the 20-something kids in the class. If we win the game, two Americans already, like adults with two. If we win, you guys all get a bris milah. If you guys win, we buy you all a Coke. It was Coca-Cola was actually not a cheap thing in the former Soviet Union. And that was a big turn on for the kids. And so there we go. So we're out in the field one day, and we were playing it out. We actually lost the game. They actually really played for the Coke, quite well. But had we won the game, they might not have really wanted the bris milah. But if I give a bris milah to a Jew, even if he's not so interested, the ma'aseh of the milah counted. He had a bris milah. Right? The same way we never really asked the kid who's 8 days old, do you want to have a bris milah? Because it doesn't matter. The point is just that you have the milah. The milah was done b'kashrus, right? So the mitzvah of Mila, when we're talking about a Jewish Mila, it just has to get done. It got done. That's good enough. The brisker of Chiddush is that a Mila of Geros is not the same Mila as a regular classic Mila. The Mila of Geros is only a bris Mila if it was done with the das of the Mizgayer. It can't be done by Karcho, and by extension, the Rav says it can't be done to a Katan either. Where's his das? He went to the mikveh, right? He went to a mikveh. It happened. No, the brisker Rav says that's not true, because the Maisa of Tefillah is only a Maisa of Tefillah if it was done with the das of the Mizgayer. But he's a Katan, he can't have das. That's why we need, the way the brisker Rav is explaining, the Zechia of the Bezdin. What they're providing, one more time, is the das that says, you want that Mila, or more accurately, we want that Mila, and we want that Tefillah. And we're being Zoche in the das that makes that Mila a Mila, and that makes that Tefillah into a Tefillah. So now the Katan is actually able to have a proper process of Geras. He just did the Mila and the Tefillah. But without the das of the Bezin saying that we have das for the Mila, we have das for the Tefillah, those wouldn't count as the Maisa Geras. But once we have a Mila and a Tefillah, the chalos of the Geras is actually done by the Katan himself, as we described earlier. Now again, the same question that Jakey had asked before, do we ever find such a concept of the Bezdin providing a das? That the answer is, that's actually a chiddush, right? And that would be a chiddush that our Tosis is being mechadish. Tosis in Sanhedrin doesn't agree with that at all. Tosis in Sanhedrin very clearly says we are not being zoche in anything over here. The whole gerus is being done by the child, by himself. It's being done by Gufo. He's doing it. We're not really being zoch in anything in the slightest bit for him. So all these concepts now that we're discussing fall within the parameters of this machlokas Rashi and Tos. Again, we're a little over time, so I apologize. We're going to stop over here. If anyone has any questions, they can ask me. Privately, everyone else can feel free to zip out and just what's the word I'm looking for?